In this lesson, we're going to look at the concept of simple interest. And simple interest, or interest in general, in simple terms, is that extra money that is paid on top of the money that was borrowed. For example, if you go to the bank and you get a loan of maybe 5 million, the bank and you will enter into an agreement, agree a percentage, and then it will be used to calculate the money that you return. So that money you return obviously will be higher than the one you borrowed, because the bank also has to make profit. So that excess, that extra money that you've paid back is what we call interest. Now, to understand interest, you need to understand some of the simple terms that we use in interest, like the principal. The money that you borrow is what we call the principal. And the total amount of money that you return after the agreed period is what we call the amount. And let's look at examples and see how to calculate simple interest. So the first question is saying find the simple interest on shillings 250,000 for 4 years at 15% per annum. So we need to know that simple interest is equal to the principal times the rate of 100 times the time. The principal is how much you borrowed, which is 250,000, times the rate is 15 out of 100, times the time, 4 years. And when we use our calculator, that amounts to 150,000 shillings. So that's the interest after a period of 4 years at a rate of 15%. Let's look at the next example. The second question says, calculate the simple interest on shillings 22,000 for 8 months at 10% per annum. Now here we need to be careful because our time is in months and our interest rate is per annum, per year. So that means that when we're calculating, we need to change the 8 months to years. So interest, simple interest, is going to be equal to the principal times the rate over 100 times time. Our principal is 22,000. The rate is 10 out of 100, and the time is 8 months. So we need to convert the months to years. That is 8 out of 12. And this gives us 1,466.7 shillings. That was the interest after a period of 8 months. Let's look at the next example. So this one says Jerry borrowed shillings 500,000 for 2.5 years at a rate of 5% per annum. How much did he pay back? In this case, we need the amount. That's the total money you pay back. But we can't have the amount unless we have the interest. We know that interest is equal to principal, which is 500,000. I'll not indicate the formula this time, times the rate. The rate is 5 out of 100 times the time, 2.5. This one gives us interest of 62,500 shillings. Now we need to get the amount. Amount is equal to principal minus the interest plus the interest, plus the interest. Principal plus the interest. So the principal is 500,000. The interest is 62,500. The total amount you pay at the end of the agreed period will be 562,500 shillings. That's how we calculate the amount. That's how we calculate the amount in simple interest. At what rate will shillings 1,500 amount to shillings 2,400 in 4 years? So we need the interest rate, and we cannot do anything unless we find the interest. We know that interest will equal to amount minus the principal. That is coming from the previous formula we've used. Amount is equal to interest plus principal. So when you make interest the subject, it becomes this. The amount is 2,400. The interest, the principal was 1,500. That gives us 900 shillings as the interest. Now we're going to use the definition of interest, the formula for interest, to determine the rate. Interest is equal to principal times the rate of 100 times time. We have our interest is 900 is equal to the principal. The principal is 1,500. We don't know the rate, but we know the time is 4 years. So this is 900 is equal to this times this, gives us 6,000 times R out of 100. These two zeros cancel. We have 900 is equal to 60 R. And when we divide through by 60, our R becomes 15. So the interest rate is at 15%. Let's look at another example. Mary took a loan and paid it back with an interest of shillings 320,000 after 5 years at a rate of 10%. How much was Mary's loan? So in this case, we're looking for the principal, the original money. So we're going to use interest is equal to principal times the rate of 100 times time. Interest will be, this can be written as P times R times T, everything out of 100. And when we cross multiply, we shall have 100 times I is equal to P times R times T. When we make P the subject, it will be 100 times I divided by this RT, or R times T. So we can substitute 100 times the interest is 320,000 out of the rate is 10% times the time, which is 5 years. So when you use a calculator, this is 50, reduces here by 2, it's around 640,000 shillings. So these few examples bring an end to the concept of simple interest, and it's all about learning the terms and using this formula most of the time to determine the interest.